Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be listening to the 7th part of What If Deku Had a Game Inventory Quirk. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 25. Tenya looked down at his costume's helmet in his hands. The sound of knocking caused him to glance up, seeing Manuel standing in the doorway to the agency's changing rooms. "You all right there, kid? You've been staring at your helmet for a good 5 minutes. We're almost late for patrol." Tenya balked. "Apologies, sir. I was just lost in my thoughts." Manuel shrugged. Don't blame you. Happens to the best of us. But seriously, get it in gear." The hero left, and Tenya sighed, before looking down at his helmet again. His resolve hardened, and he turned it around, laying it on his head. "I promise, brother. The villain who ended your career will not walk the streets once I am done." Fumikage stood before Hawk's desk. "Sir. The point of this internship is so that I can learn how to be a hero from a professional." The hero waved a drumstick of fried chicken dismissively. "And you are? I've taken you on patrol, right?" Fumikage huffed. "That barely qualifies, sir. It is hard for me to learn from my mentor when he is constantly 2 blocks away. You are not teaching me how to be a hero. If anything, you are teaching me how to be a sidekick. I need to learn how to handle villains myself." Hawk swallowed his bite of chicken and leaned forward with a spark of interest in his eyes. "On the topic of villains, I heard your class got attacked by a bunch of them a few weeks ago. Must have been scary, huh?" Fumikage scowled. "I do not see why that is any of your concern." Hawks held his hands up defensively. "Hey, whoa, a bird can't see if his chick's doing alright after a traumatic experience." Fumikage crossed his arms. "Most birds actually care for their chicks while the young are still in the nest. You, meanwhile, are effectively kicking me out of the tree before I've even left my egg." Hawks shrugged. "Whatever. Point is, I heard that the League is bad news, so I wanted to be prepared if they ever showed up again." "Happy?" Fumikage frowned. "It seems as though you are more concerned with learning about the actions of the League than you are with actually giving your intern useful advice. I am sure Principal Nedzu would not be pleased to hear that you had sent a student an internship offer solely as a means of acquiring information, especially when he could have given you said information himself." Hawks shuddered, but Fumikage could tell that it was exaggerated. "The rat scares me, okay. I'm not brave enough to talk to him in person." Fumikage shook his head in disappointment. "And I thought hawks were a rat's natural predator. You're a disgrace to avians the world over, sir." He turned on his heel and marched towards the door of the office. "If you will not give me a proper internship experience, then I will get one of your sidekicks to take me on a proper patrol, one where I can actually watch a pro in action." Dark Shadow popped out from under his cloak and blew a raspberry at the hero as they left. "He's no fun." Fumikage hummed. "Though, it seems he is constantly putting up a facade of bravado. A permanent actor, stuck in character. How intriguing." Tamura turned over his PlayStation controller in his hands as one of Kurogiri's warps swirled into existence, and Stain walked through into the bar. The mist man coalesced behind the bar, immediately pulling out an empty glass and a clean rag. The hero killer scanned his surroundings with a critical eye. "Well, this isn't the best of first impressions. If you want me to join your group, you aren't doing a very good job of convincing me so far." Tamura shrugged. "Makes sense to keep your better cards close to your chest. Start small, then work your way up until the other player accepts the trade offer. Only give as much as you need, so that you aren't wasting your best items." Stain raised an eyebrow. "You're smarter than the rumors give you credit for. I'd heard that you had the temperament of a toddler with the resources of a king." Tamura huffed. "I figured I'd put more points into my intelligence stat." Stain crossed his arms. "Very well. What is the purpose of this meeting? Make it quick, I have work to do." Tamura sighed. "So pushy. Fine. I was hoping that you and I could work out a deal. We'd get to borrow your rep and call you in for the occasional mission. In return, you'd get access to our resources." The hero killer raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" Kurogiri's portals, backup Nomu in the event you take on a hero too tough to handle solo, and living quarters that aren't old apartments in the slums of whatever city you're working in. We've got water, electricity, heat, food, even Wi-Fi. Certainly would make it easier to keep tabs on corrupt heroes, yeah. Stain hummed. You make good points. But why make this offer? Simple. I'm sure you've noticed that business isn't exactly booming right now. Long story short, we're low on manpower. That's where your rep comes in. You probably haven't noticed, with how you've been living, but word spreads in the underworld when a single person has successfully killed dozens of heroes without being caught. You've got a following, hero killer. People idolize you. And if you're associated with the League, then that means more manpower for both of us. After all, the more people who share your vision, the wider you can spread your message. Stain narrowed his eyes. I will bear this task alone. If others wish to join me, that is their own prerogative, but I will not ask anyone to shoulder this burden alongside me. Tamura shrugged, palms up. Whatever. You don't have to ask them, I'm just saying that they'd be available if you did want their help. Of course, that's all assuming that you're willing to join. Stain huffed. I suppose your offer presents several advantages and few disadvantages. However, something doesn't add up. You offered the potential assistance of the Nomua, yes. But it seems that neither you nor the bartender have the capabilities to produce them. What are you not telling me? After all, if we are to have a working relationship, we must be open with each other. Tamura glanced over at the TV in the corner, mentally swearing when he saw the light on. That information is classified to non-members. If you prove your allegiance to me, then I might tell you. The hero killer scoffed. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Bring me back to Hosu, I still have business there. Tamura sighed. Fine. Kurojiri, take him back. The bartender nodded. Of course, Shigaraki Tamura. Katsuki grunted as he slammed a thug's face into a nearby wall. You know, most heroes wouldn't take first-year interns to a drug bust. Mirako laughed as she drop-kicked another thug, sending the guy flying through one of the top windows of the warehouse. I'm not most heroes. Yurika groaned as she flipped a guy over her shoulder and slammed him into the ground. I think we knew that, considering the first thing you did was beat the shit out of us. Mirako snorted and dropped another thug with an axe kick. Hey, that was necessary to segue into training. And it worked, didn't it? Yurika sighed, before jumping to the side to avoid a thug swinging bat. She hit the wall on all fours and bounced off, flying through the air and bringing the dude to the ground with a perfect jumping cutter. Fair enough. At least now I'm not going feral every time I fight someone, which is a huge plus. Katsuki pivoted on his heel and delivered an uppercut to the jaw of the thug behind him, sending the poor soul flying through the roof of the warehouse. Not what I first thought this internship would be like, but you don't see me complaining. Mirako laughed and punched a thug through a window. That's the spirit, kid. Static filled the air, and Katsuki paused. Shit. Uravaiti, you feel that? The girl nodded, glancing around as she settled into a combative stance. Mirako frowned and sniffed the air. What, the static? The city's crawling with electrical shit, so you're bound to get a lot of that. Katsuki shook his head. This is a different kind of static. You don't forget how something feels when you've pinned it down by the neck brace for a good 2 minutes. This is the same feeling as the warp bastard from the USJ. Mirako swore under her breath. What did they say his name was? Kurojiri, or some shit like that. Katsuki shrugged. I don't fucking know. Izuku was the one who actually heard the names. All I know is that he's a slippery bastard and a pain in the ass. Yurika huffed as she backflipped to land behind another thug, quickly yanking the knife from his hand and pinning him to the ground. Ground Zero, you know better than either of us how to deal with that guy. We've got these guys handled. Go. Tamura grunted as he stepped out of the portal onto the top of a water tower, overlooking the bustling lights of Hosu below. Charming place, isn't it? Stain huffed, crouched on the edge of the roof. It is rotten, infected by a disease. I still have yet to call it here. My work will continue until all of Japan's heroes learn to save people over their own pathetic careers. Tamura raised an eyebrow. Really? Your goal is to make the heroes do their jobs better? Stain scowled. Society is filled with fakes and frauds, seeking the profession out of a lust for fame and fortune. I will destroy those who sully the title of hero, making way for a more just society. Tomura clapped slowly. Magnificent speech, truly. Shame you haven't buffed your charisma stat to match. Ever considered saying that to a hero and letting them live to pass on the message? Stain scoffed. Of course. In every city, I kill 3 heroes, then injure 1 more and let them live to tell the tale. And crime rates have fallen in the cities I have already purged. Tomura huffed. And did you ever stop to listen to what those survivors said about you? Stain paused. Elaborate. Tomura crossed his arms. I took the liberty of digging around the internet and found an interview with one of your survivors. Remember Musudafu? Some guy called Slugger. Stain nodded slowly. Yes. What about him? A couple days after you attacked him, he appeared on Hero News Nightly for an interview. You know what he said? Stain is a crazed monster. Nobody knows why he goes after heroes specifically, or why he only leaves some alive while killing others. It's nuts. I just barely managed to hit a home run and get my butt out of there alive. Does that sound like the words of a man spreading your message? Stain scowled. That utter fool. Did he even listen to me? I spent a solid 2 minutes explaining my vision. Tomura nodded. And he's not alone. Pretty much every hero who survived has reported something similar. The only hero you didn't kill who hasn't said anything yet is Ingenium. Stain winced. Ingenium was a mistake. He was not my target. In fact, he is one of the few who I could potentially see as a true hero. But he stood between me and my target, so I had to face him. For his altruism, I let him live, and I made sure to tell him as such. Has he not mentioned our encounter yet? Tomura shook his head. You put the dude in a coma. He's not expected to wake up for another 2 weeks at minimum. Fans have been outraged, demanding that the commission crack down on you for daring to take their favorite hero off the field. And going off the fact that Miruko's in town, I'd say they're listening. Stain huffed. If they will not listen to words, then they will listen to force. Tomura raised an eyebrow. Really? You're sure they won't just double down and insist that you're a crazed lunatic who goes around killing heroes just because you can? Stain paused, before sighing. I hate to admit it, but you have a point. The heroes are stubborn to a fault. What would you do? Tomura grunted. It's probably rich coming from me, but what might work is if you actually toned it down. Find a hero and get them to sit still, but instead of grandstanding and talking at them, talk to them. Make sure they actually get why you're doing what you're doing. Then it's more likely that they'll spread your message. And if one hero isn't enough, then keep doing it. Persistence gets you pretty far if done right. Stain grunted, before turning to face the city below. Talk to them, not at them. I think I can try that. He paused, before glancing back at Tomura. Do not think that this means I have accepted your deal. Until you are willing to be open with me, I refuse to work with you. The hero killer leaped off of the roof, landing on the building across the street and immediately running off towards his next objective. Tomura huffed, before a tingle ran down his spine. He immediately schooled his expression as Sensei appeared out of thin air, his life support mask settled firmly on his face. How frustrating. I had hoped that you would sway such an important piece to your side. I am disappointed, Tomura. Tomura scoffed. Evidently, my charisma stat wasn't high enough. I'll need to dump more points into it if I want to recruit more units later. Sensei chuckled, before scanning the city. The thought comes to mind that one does not necessarily need the cooperation of another villain to be associated with said villain. Tomura huffed. You're saying that if we made an action during the same turn as the hero killer, then the NPCs would assume that we're in the same party, right? Sensei chuckled warmly. Precisely. How you choose to act is up to you, but know that I will support whatever action you take. The supervillain disappeared, and Tomura let out a brief sigh of relief. Kurojiri. Send word to the doctor that we need 3 low-tier nomas. I think a little chaos would make Sensei happy, wouldn't you? Tinya glanced up as screams echoed from the commercial district of Hosuke. Manuel took off, and Tinya was quick to follow, slipping his helmet over his head as he ran. Sir. What's happening? I don't know, kid, but screams are never good when it's not Halloween. Be ready for anything. Tinya could see a low orange light over the rooftops, and it was steadily growing. He could just barely make out multiple columns of smoke rising above. "Sir. It would seem that the city is on fire." Manuel removed a hand from his earpiece. "It's worse than that. We've got 3 unknown villains causing chaos in the commercial district. We need to move." Tinya's brain froze. Chaos. In the chaos, the hero killer will surely attempt to take another life while the other heroes are distracted. This is my chance. He quickly darted off into a side alley, weaving around dumpsters and trash bags as he ran through Hosu. It only took him a few minutes to notice the glint of light off of steel coming from another alley, and he darted to the entrance to see Stain kneeling by a dumpster, looking down at something on the ground. The hero killer glanced up, scowling at Tinya's sudden appearance. You are a child. Leave now. It is not your place to interfere. I cannot allow that. You will fall here and now, hero killer." Tinya sped forward, aiming a kick at the villain's face. At the last second, Stain leaned back and brought his foot up, tripping Tinya and causing him to careen into the wall at the other end of the alleyway. "So brash. And foolish. Do you really think that you, a mere student, would stand victorious against a seasoned killer? And without backup, no less." Tinya scowled, clambering to his feet as he noted that his helmet had been lost in the collision. "I will bring you down, villain. For my brother?" Stain raised an eyebrow. "That armor. A fan of Ingenium, then?" "His younger brother." The hero killer clicked his tongue in disappointment. "Tragic. I have no quarrel with you. Your brother's injuries were not my intention that day. I had sought another target, but Ingenium intervened, and I could not allow myself to be caught when my work was yet to be finished." Tinya snarled, empty words from a crazed murderer. "Your reign of terror ends now, hero killer." Stain stabbed his katana into the ground. "Really? I thought that the first rule of heroics was to prioritize the rescue. If you truly wish to live up to your brother's legacy, then you should have rescued him first." He gestured to the wall of the alley, and Tinya's eyes narrowed when he saw the prone form of an underground hero leaning against a dumpster. "You. Get out of here. This is my fight." Stain scoffed. Naive to assume that he is capable of moving. The hero glanced over at Tinya. "Stain is right. I'm paralyzed from the neck down. Must be his quirk." Tinya was suddenly aware of a trickle of blood running down his right arm. "He must have scratched me when he tripped me." Stain huffed at Tinya's expression, bringing a knife dripping with blood to his face. "Your awareness is poor, child. Your brother would be disappointed with how slowly you noticed your wound." He licked the blade, and Tinya's muscles locked up. He collapsed to the floor of the alley, his eyes going wide. What did you do, villain?" Stain huffed and wiped the blade of the knife with a piece of cloth, before resheathing it. "My quirk, obviously. You can no longer move your body below your neck." The villain pulled his katana from the ground and strode forward, stopping in front of where Tinya laid. He knelt, looking the student in the eyes. "Listen, and listen well, boy. Your brother's coma was a mistake. I would much rather have let him continue his career. I only fought him because he insisted on protecting my target, as a hero should." Tinya's mind froze. "What?" Stain sheathed his katana. "The profession is diseased, corrupted by those who seek fame and fortune in favor of defending the civilians they have sworn to protect. People die every day because the closest hero was too busy posing for the cameras. There are those who bring honor to the profession, like your brother did, but they are far outshined by frauds." Tinya scowled. "I will never listen to anything you say, villain. You ended my brother's career, and that is something I cannot forgive." Stain huffed. "So stubborn. People like you who refuse to listen to reason are a majority of the problem. You are young, you still have the capacity to change. For now, I will let you live. But, if you cross paths with me as a full hero and still insist on taking revenge for your brother, then I will cut you down." The hero killer stood and strode to the entrance of the alleyway. When he reached the street, he paused and glanced back at the 2 figures lying in the alley. "Be grateful that I left you alive to spread the word. Let the other heroes know, should they pursue wealth and glory, should they disregard the lives of civilians in favor of attention, then I will be there. I will wipe the stain of fake heroes from the earth so that true heroes may rise to save those who were abandoned. I will watch. I will judge. and I will cull those who disgrace the title of hero. The hero killer darted across the street, disappearing into the shadows of another alley. Rustling could be heard on the rooftops above, and there was a short beep. Bakugo dropped from the roof of an adjacent building, clad in his hero costume. Better get that recording to the police. Maybe they'll finally get a read on Stain. The blonde pocketed his phone and turned towards Tinya, placing a hand on his hip. But right now, my priority is you, Glasses. Mind telling me what the fuck you were thinking, trying to take on the hero killer by yourself? Tinya bristled. He ended my brother's career. I could not sit back and let the heroes allow him to remain on the streets. Bakugo rolled his eyes. Nobody's saying that a killer should be allowed to roam free. What I asked is why you thought you had to be the one to do it, dumbass. The hero, who Tinya now recognized as native, huffed. I'd like to know the same thing. You're still just a student, you don't have nearly enough experience, skill, or power to take on an S-rank villain by yourself. You'd better be the exception in your class, or I'm putting in a complaint to Eraserhead. Bakugo scoffed. I'm doing that myself anyway. Consider yourself lucky if Sensei doesn't expel your ass for pulling this shit. He twitched, before raising a hand to his ear. Don't bother, Bunny. Stain's already gone, so coming to my location ain't gonna do shit. Go ahead and help Uravide finish up with those guys, I've got my own problems to handle over here. Chapter 26. Izuku's phone dinged, and he glanced over at where it was sitting in the corner of the gym. He immediately wished he hadn't, as Momo's bow staff slammed into his chest and sent him flying into the padded wall behind him. To her credit, the girl immediately went pale, dropped her staff, and ran over, a worried expression on her face. Izuku-kun. Are you alright? I thought you were paying attention. Izuku coughed and mentally checked himself over, sighing with relief at the lack of any broken bones. I was, up until my phone dinged. I have it set to only notify me for texts from important contacts. Momo sighed. I see. Izuku jumped. Wait, I got a text from someone important. He quickly peeled himself off the wall and ran over to his phone, picking it up and opening the notification. Katsuki, the dumbass is alive. Laid up in a hospital bed for some minor scrapes and currently being lectured by Aizawa-sensei and Manuel, but otherwise okay. Attached was an image of Itza, laying in a hospital bed with his right arm in a sling. Momo glanced over Izuku's shoulder and sighed. I guess he did end up trying it after all. I suppose we should be grateful that nobody was killed. Izuku nodded. Especially after Hosu's destruction was all over the news last night. I was seriously scared that the others wouldn't make it through all right. Thankfully, the news this morning reported 0 fatalities and minimal casualties. Fat Gum huffed, and the two interns jumped at the hero's sudden presence behind them. Good to hear. Still, that was a pretty dumb move by your classmate, eh? Izuku nodded. Yeah. Ingenium's his older brother, so he was kind of focused on getting revenge, near as I can tell. Fat Gum winced. Yikes. He's lucky that Stain let him live. He was dangerous when he came through Isuha a couple months back. I never ran into him myself, but I heard plenty about him from the other heroes. Izuku glanced over at the TV in the corner of the gym, currently playing a news broadcast about the situation in Hosu the previous night. He's also lucky that Katsuki was nearby, especially considering that the other heroes were occupied by the hell that happened last night. Suddenly, the TV flickered, and the news broadcast cut to a live feed from a bar, with the hero killer sitting in full view. Greetings, Japan. Don't worry, this will only take a moment, and then you can get back to whatever it was that you were doing. Stain got up from the bar stool he was sitting on and placed his hands behind his back, looking into the camera. I believe it's safe to assume you've all heard of me at some point. Stain, the oh-so-infamous hero killer. In your eyes, a crazed murderer who targets heroes for reasons unknown. You may wonder why I do what I do. He spread his arms wide. Well, wonder no more. Consider this my manifesto. He stepped backwards and sat back down on the stool, crossing his legs and placing his hands on his knee. Heroes. A constant in our society, hailed as gods among men. However, not every pro-hero deserves the title. Before the advent of quirks, a hero was any person who helped another in need. Firefighters, police officers, paramedics, all of them were considered heroes. But in today's society, the term has become corrupted. A hero is no longer someone who saves another without expectation for reward. Today, a hero is one who uses their quirk to fight crime and gets paid for it. A hero is a showboat who seeks the limelight and ignores the suffering of others in the pursuit of fame and fortune. Izuku winced. Harsh, but true. There's a lot of heroes who ignore crime-ridden areas in order to better find the cameras. Stain continued, it turns my stomach to think about how many people live in poverty and suffering, all because their precious heroes are too busy chasing cameras and scheduling interviews. True, there are those who do genuinely work for the betterment of the people. Present Mike, whose radio show is a beacon of hope in a sea of darkness. Ingenium, who once donated his profits to charities for the weak and downtrodden. All Might, who saves everyone around him with his sheer presence. But the few saviors are far outnumbered by the many glory hounds who chase attention and refuse to put their lives on the line. I once was like many of you. Willing to sit on the sidelines, to wait for a hero to come and fix the problems in society. But now, I understand that a product of a broken society will not fix it. So, I will step in. I will remove this blight on the world. To those who try their best, those who eschew glory to save as many as they can, rejoice, for I am your greatest ally. But to those who sit back, those who eschew danger to get as much attention as they can, beware, for I am your worst enemy. Stain stood up and strode forward, one hand drawing his katana. I will stain my hands with the blood of frauds until society recognizes its mistakes and works to correct them. And if they refuse, then I will strike them down, one by one, until those who remain will seek the betterment of the world. He made a slashing motion, and the camera feed cut out, quickly switching back to the news broadcast. The anchor was pale and silent, before the broadcast cut to a blank white screen. An automated voice said, "We are currently experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by." Tomura clapped slowly as Stain sheathed his katana, having not actually cut the camera. Magnificent. Truly, a speech for the ages. Stain huffed and sat down at the bar. I spoke nothing but the truth. Jiren chuckled and swept the camera off the table, quickly stashing it in one of his jacket's many pockets. The truth is often all you need. And Kurojiri was clearly in the background, so anyone who wants to join is gonna flock to this place once they connect the dots. Tomura grinned. And you're gonna give them the pen, yeah? Jiren snorted and headed towards the door. Only if I get paid. I expect my usual price within the week. The TV in the corner flickered on. Rest assured, broker, you will get your due. Jiren nodded and left, quietly closing the door behind him. Stain raised an eyebrow. And who might you be? Sensei chuckled. You may call me Sensei. I was the one who raised Tomura, and I will advise him and provide my resources until he proves that he no longer needs my guidance. The hero killer scoffed. So he was never the mastermind behind the league at all. Tomura quickly coughed. The party leader isn't always the strategist. Sensei gives me suggestions and advice, but he doesn't make the final decisions. Sensei chuckled. Precisely. If you have anything you wish to request, then go to Tomura. He is the head of the league, after all. The TV cut off, and Stain grunted, before glancing at Tomura. Something is amiss. He speaks with far too much authority to not be in command. Explain. Tomura huffed and stood up from his booth, heading towards the stairs that led to the rooms above. Let me show you to your room first. Stain raised an eyebrow, but followed anyway. Tomura led the older villain up a single flight of stairs, before opening the first door on the right. He showed Stain into a room with a bed, a dresser, a desk, a chair, a computer, and a window that overlooked the street in front of the bar. Here's where you're staying. The thermostat is by the door if you need to change the temperature, the kitchen is at the end of the hall, and the bathroom is the last door on the left. The Wi-Fi is named Night Cloud Bar, no password, and you should get decent bandwidth up here. Stain scoffed. Not bad, I suppose. Tomura nodded. Best of all, it's private. No cameras like there are down in the bar. Stain raised an eyebrow and removed his various sheaths, leaning them against the wall before plopping on the bed. So, explain why your sensei seems to be in command, not you. Tomura sighed and shut the door, before pulling the chair out from under the desk and sitting down in it. Well, he is in charge. Sensei claims that I'm the leader, but he's the one making the plans. He and the doctor are always holed up in their secret headquarters plotting and making the Nomua, and I'm just the figurehead. Stain huffed. You do not seem pleased by that. Tomura shrugged. A while back, I was. But then we attacked the USJ, and Player 2 gave me a fresh perspective. I realized that Sensei never gave me a choice, and kinda forced me into the whole villain thing. Stain grunted and glanced down at the floor. He's the rumored Quirk dealer, isn't he? Tomura's eyes widened. How'd you figure it out? Stain made a small noise of surprise and pointed at Tomura's bright red shoes. Your footwear. You wear Primordial shoes. Nearly everybody knows that Primordial is the only brand that makes footwear for quirkless people, which has to be wider to accommodate the extra toe joint. And Primordial makes exclusively one style and one color of quirkless footwear. It's a modern-day Star of David. Tomura scowled. So, with the toe joint, it's impossible to naturally develop a quirk as strong as yours. The only recorded cases are weak quirks such as changing one's eye color or extending one's fingernails by a couple inches. The only way for you to have both your quirk and the toe joint would be if it was given to you. Tomura huffed. Sure. Then explain how, when I was a kid, decay manifested without warning while I was sitting in my backyard. Stain scoffed. Is it so ridiculous to believe that your sensei did not possess some form of invisibility or illusion quirk at the time? Tomura opened his mouth to retort, then paused. Slowly, he reached into his shirt and removed the small embalmed paw he wore on a necklace. He turned it over in his hands, careful not to touch it with all 5 fingers. So, sensei's the reason I have decay. Stain grunted. It would appear that way. So it's not my fault. Stain raised an eyebrow in confusion. Excuse me. Tomura started chuckling, tucking the paw back under his shirt. It was sensei's fault the whole time. I wasn't the reason why they died, it was sensei. He threw back his head and started cackling. He always was a manipulative bastard, wasn't he? Right from the beginning, he was just grooming me into a mindset of constant death and destruction. He removed the hand from his left wrist and stared down at it. Somehow, I believed that she wouldn't blame me. Tell me, Stain, do you believe in ghosts? In the afterlife? Do you think that the spirits of those close to you watch you from beyond the grave? Stain huffed. It would seem that I've stumbled upon something personal. I'd rather not be privy to the details. But what will you do with this new information? Tomura sighed and placed the embalmed hand back on his left wrist. For now, I'll play Sensei's game. I'll let him think I'm the pure DPS he wants me to be. But if the opportunity presents itself, then I'm going to break my code. Hard. He glanced up at the hero killer. What about you? Stain crossed his arms. I never trusted your organization all that much. I definitely don't trust your sensei. He smirked. But I might be willing to trust you. Kurogiri swirled into existence by the door of the room. I take it you have made your decision, Shigaraki Tomura. Tomura nodded, standing from the chair with a grin on his face. Yeah. I've chosen my route. Let's see where it takes us. Kurogiri hummed warmly. Something in me is proud of you. Hopefully, when this is all over, I will be able to learn what it is. The Monday after internships, Aizawa-sensei walked into the classroom and was met with complete silence. He glanced over at where Okako was sitting, and she smiled, waving her sling-free right hand. He smirked warmly, before scanning the rest of the class. Well, you all came back from your internships intact. Good. Aoyama raised his hand and asked, Monsieur? Where is Aiza-kun? Aizuka grunted. Hopefully learning his lesson. Aizawa-sensei sighed. For your information, Aiza is currently suspended for the week after his stunt during internships. Tsu tilted her head curiously. Stunt, Kuro. Aizuku huffed. The idiot tried to go after Stain to get revenge for his brother. He's lucky the guy let him live. Aizawa-sensei nodded. Precisely. He'll be expected to submit an essay on the dangers of vigilantism and going after a villain without permission. But enough about him. With Stain's message hijacking every news channel last Thursday, villainous activity has been increasing steadily, with an emphasis on attacking hero agencies. As such, you're going to need to improve, and fast. So don't expect us to go easy on you during training. Todoroki seemed to jerk slightly at the word training. Glancing over at the two-toned boy, Izuku just barely noticed fresh bruises hidden underneath the other teen's uniform, along with what looked like a second-degree burn on the front of his throat. That looks painful. Where the heck did that burn come from? His worries only increased as time went on. Throughout morning classes, Todoroki was completely silent, throwing out rudimentary signs if he was ever called on, with Fumikage occasionally translating. The bird-headed boy had learned JSL after finding out that Kastuki's explosions were steadily making the blonde go deaf. When the bell rang for foundational heroics, All Might marched through the door with his trademark smile. "Welcome back, 1A. Let's see how much you've grown during your internships. Throw on your costumes and head to the buses. Our destination is Ground Gamma." A few minutes later, Class 1A filed into the sprawling industrial complex. Thankfully, there was a raised platform by the entrance, with a screen displaying feeds from multiple cameras placed around the training ground. All Might boomed, "Right, then. Let's get straight into it. Today's lesson is a rescue race." Momo raised her hand. "Sir? If today's subject is rescue, would it not be a better idea to use the USJ?" All Might grinned wider. "Ah, but the USJ is for natural disasters. Today, we're simulating something you're more likely to be doing as heroes. You will race in groups of 5, spaced around the edges of Ground Gamma. I will be positioned somewhere inside, and your goal is to reach me as fast as you possibly can. I will send up a flare to signal the start of each race. Any further questions?" Izuku raised his hand. "Is there going to be a group of 4, since Aitsa isn't here?" All Might nodded. "That is correct. If that will be all, then these are the 4 groups. Group 1, Ashido, Kaminari, Kirishima, Bakugo, Aoyama. Group 2, Ajui, Ajiro, Kauda, Shaoji, Tokoyami. Group 3, Urarika, Satu, Hagakure, Midoriya, Yaoyorozu. Group 4, Aoyama, Jiro, Shiro, Todoroki." It didn't end well. Group 1 had been as expected. Ashido climbed up and over the various pipes and towers by melting handholds and footholds with her acid. Kaminari and Kirishima just ran as fast as they could, though the redhead would occasionally harden his fingers and stab them into a wall to give himself a little extra height, making him slightly faster. Katsuki simply flew overhead with his explosions, easily getting to All Might first out of the group. Hitachi had swung around the pipes using his capture scarf. Group 2 got creative. Tsu took hints from Hitachi's performance and used her tongue as a mock grappling hook. Ajiro bounced from pipe to pipe off his tail, though he was slightly behind Tsu in terms of speed. Kauda summoned a tidal wave of rats and had them carry him through the twisted terrain, coming in just after Ajiro. Shaoji, like Kaminari, just ran as fast as he could, though his developed leg muscles meant he was a good bit faster than the blonde. Fumikage, however, had ironically shined, using his abyssal shroud technique to swing from pipe to pipe, just barely outpacing Tsu. Group 3 had the closest three-way tie of the class. Okako, Izuku, and Momo were among the fastest performances for the entire exercise. Okako lightened her gravity and bounced around like a pinball, but with substantially more control than before. Izuku had manifested his extreme gear, bobbing and weaving around the pipes and towers. Momo had created shoes with incredibly powerful springs, bringing her up to Izuku's level of speed and reaching All Might at about the same time as the other 2. Poor Satu and Hagakure were left in the dust, forced to run on their own 2 feet. Izuku ended up claiming the victory. Group 4 was when things went south. As soon as the flare had gone up, Todoroki had unleashed a massive glacier that had devastated the entirety of Ground Gamma. Aoyama, Kuka, and Shiro didn't even have a chance to move before they were frozen solid. Izuku had to fly over the frozen hellscape on his extreme gear and use a Momo-made flamethrower to free his classmates from their icy prison. The worst part was that Todoroki hadn't said a thing afterwards, walking off towards the main campus the second that Izuku dropped him at the entrance. Izuku frowned as he dropped to the ground, his extreme gear dissipating into thin air. What's his deal? I know overwhelming force is his usual MO, but he wasn't this harsh before, not even during the battle trials. What gives? Momo hummed. If memory serves, he chose to intern with Endeavor because, and I quote, he's the only one who would actually teach me anything. I'm worried for him. Izuku scowled. And the burn on his throat doesn't make me feel any better. Something's not right here. There's no good reason a person should be that cold, ice quirk or otherwise. Chapter 27. Midterms were a few weeks later. Momo took the top spot in the class rankings, as expected, and Izuku was close behind in second. Katsuki took third, and Aitsa, now returned from his suspension, was in fourth. Todoroki had nearly frozen Aizawa-sensei to the podium when he heard that he was in fifth place. The teen's mood only continued to worsen during the following months. In every single exercise for foundational heroics, he would wordlessly unleash massive bursts of ice, caring little for collateral damage or his own teammates. It got to the point that All Might started pitting the entire class against Todoroki, 19-1. The fact that the two-toned boy never succeeded with his strategy didn't help. His poor mood was beginning to leak into the academic classes, too. Even after the burn on his throat had long since healed, Todoroki wouldn't say a word in class. He didn't even resort to sign language. His grades were beginning to drop, which only served to make his attitude worse. In addition, every Monday, he would come into the classroom with a fresh bruise somewhere on his body. Arms, shoulders, chest, neck, cheeks, legs, anywhere. He never showed any outward signs of pain, but the bruises were on full display every time the boys changed into their costumes for heroics classes. And they weren't healing like they should have. As the semester exams approached, Todoroki's body had more bruises than it did healthy skin. Izuku was getting worried. Todoroki's clear dismissal of his health, both mental and physical, was concerning. Also concerning was the clear increase in Endeavor's temper. The hero was churning out more villain and civilian casualties than ever before, and the statistics were getting steadily worse day by day. The written half of the semester exams came and went in a blur. Soon enough, it was the day of the practical exam, and Class 1A filed into the parking lot to see the teachers standing in front of the buses. Aitsa raised his hand and asked, "Sensei, I was under the impression that we would be facing robots for our practical exam. Why are the teachers here?" Aizawa-sensei huffed. In previous years, those rumors would have been correct. However, due to your class' apparent inability to stay out of trouble, we're moving up the curriculum a bit. Principal Nedzu popped out of Aizawa-sensei's scarf and announced, "Instead, your opponents will be us teachers." Kaminari and Ashido went pale as Aizawa-sensei spoke up, "It's not as bad as it might sound. You'll be split into pairs, and each pair will face a different teacher. You'll have two methods to pass. Option 1, evade us and get through the exit gate of your testing location. Or option 2, he held up a pair of handcuffs. Get this around one of our wrists." Fumikage hummed. Surely it would be folly to attempt to face such strong opponents head-on. Anything other than trying to escape would be tantamount to suicide. Aizawa-sensei grinned. "Normally, you'd be correct. However, since you're just first years, we've decided to even the playing field a bit." He reached into his scarf and pulled out a thick bracelet lined with black bars. "We had the support department make us these super compressed weights for the exam. Each one adds about a quarter of our body weight, and since we'll be wearing several each, then direct engagement becomes a more viable option." Aitsa hummed. "So it is up to us to decide how we would handle the situation. Do we attempt to face our foe head-on, or do we attempt to escape when it becomes clear that our opponent is superior?" Aizawa-sensei nodded. "Exactly. A lesson that you have hopefully learned by now." Aitsa rubbed at his neck sheepishly. The hero continued, "In any case, pairs and matchups have been decided ahead of time. All exams will take place concurrently, so that everyone has the same amount of time to strategize." 13 raised her hand. "I will be facing Starlight Nova and Urivide." Aoyama smiled nervously, while Okako grinned and slammed a fist into her palm. Nedzu chuckled. "I will go against Acid Queen and Charge Bolt." Both students turned pale at the same time. Ectoplasm cleared his throat. "I will face Froppy and Kurayami." Fumikage nodded at Tsu, who nodded back. Power Loader huffed. "I'll be up against Ignition and Karate Kong." Aitsa slipped his helmet on as Ajiro moved to stand with his partner. Cementos pointed his thumb at his chest. "My opponents will be Red Riot and Baker's Dozen." Kirishima grinned and banged his fists together, while Sato looked a little nervous. "Present Mike struck a pose. Anima and Jack Sabbath, prepare for the gnarliest mosh pit of your lives." Kyuka smirked and clanged her brass knuckles together, and her teammate mustered up a nervous smile. Snipe grunted. "I'll be handling Tentacle and Mirage." The large teen huffed as his partner bounced over. Midnight stroked her whip suggestively. I'll be facing Cellophane and Hypnose. Do give me some fun, won't you? Zero started sweating, but Hitachi groaned and dragged a hand down his face. Eraserhead huffed. Hyuga and Creatai, you're facing me. Todoroki said nothing as Momo nervously edged closer to her teammate. Izuku glanced over at Katsuki and raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, our opponent. He trailed off as a massive figure crashed to the pavement in front of them. All Might stood up from his crouch and placed a massive fist over his chest. Yes me. Izuku and Katsuki glanced at each other, before looking at the number 1 hero and grinning. Challenge accepted. Okako checked over her gear as she and Aoyama stood at the entrance to their exam area. Glancing around the fake greenhouse, Okako asked, I know we're not all that acquainted, but we'd better be aware of exactly what we can do if we're gonna pass this thing. Aoyama nodded. My naval laser is bright, but it is still physical. It would not hold up well under Professor 13's quirk. Okako hummed. That stinks. Wait, are those lenses in your heels? Aoyama smiled brightly. Indeed, mademoiselle. My costumes designer constructed my armor in a way that allows my quirk to operate from any lens on my person, including from my feet. Okako rubbed at her chin. I remember that your laser was strong enough to propel you through the air for the 50-meter dash. You think you could pull off something similar? Aoyama's eyes widened. Magnific, my dear companion. Perhaps I might even outpace our opponent's black hole. Okako smirked, before placing her hand on her chin. Now, what I can do against her is largely based on how her quirk functions. If it's a strong gravitational force like the name suggests, then I might be able to make myself immune to it via my own quirk. However, if it's just a super strong wind that pulls stuff in, then I'm out of luck. Aoyama hummed. While they are playing the part of villains, they are still our teachers, non. Surely, they would not harm us too badly for what is, in essence, a simple exercise. Okako smacked a fist into her palm. You're right. So, if we manage to get in close, then 13-sensei won't use her quirk, since it would hurt us too badly at that range. She slipped her visor over her head, grinning as the HUD flickered on. Aoyama-kun, you're amazing. The French blonde blushed. Non, I am not amazing. I am simply observant. Okako huffed. Don't make me send you to Rumi for a no-negativity internship. You're going to appreciate your talents if I have anything to say about it. She turned her attention to the ticking clock above the start gate. But right now, we've got bigger fish to fry. Are you ready? Aoyama smiled, striking a pose. Of course, mademoiselle. The countdown hit 0, and the loudspeakers blared, exam start. Denki fiddled with his copper gauntlets as the clock above the entrance gate ticked down. So, what's the plan? Ashido glanced at him with panic in her eyes. Don't die, mainly. I couldn't think of anything beyond that. I mean, we're up against the smartest hero in all of Japan, here. There's no way we can outthink him. Denki hummed, scanning the abandoned warehouses and pipes around them. Maybe not long term. But there's something to be said for thinking on your feet. Ashido groaned. I can barely think on or off my feet. We're doomed. Denki grabbed her by the shoulders and looked her in the eyes. Hey. Calm down. It's just an exam, okay? This isn't a life or death situation. We're not gonna die if we fail. Ashido sniffed. How are you so calm? Denki released her and glanced around the area. Right now, I'm thinking about this like a video game. At the moment, it's a stealth mission, trying to avoid the enemy's sightlines, but it can turn into a live combat encounter at any moment. Though, knowing the principle, it's more likely to be a quick-time event with environmental hazards. Ashido snapped her fingers. That makes a lot of sense. Why didn't you lead with that? He raised an eyebrow at her. Didn't take you for the kind of person who played video games. You strike me as more of DDR than MGR. Ashido huffed. Ajiro got into video games during middle school, and it seemed like another way to keep up my flexibility. I never got very far into them, but I know the basics. Denki grinned. Alright, then. Mission start. The countdown hit 0, and the loudspeakers blared, exam start. Denki shrugged. Same thing. Fumikage rifled through his various pockets and pouches, making sure that everything was in place. He glanced at the hallway ahead of them, humming to himself. You looked over the map, correct? What do we need to be wary of? Tsu hummed. There's 2 open cylindrical areas, Kuro. Each one has multiple floors, and there are various hallways on each floor connecting them. This hallway leads to the first floor of one of the areas, Kuro. The exit is on the first floor of the other area. Fumikage grunted and flicked open one of his belt pouches. And is the entire area enclosed? Tsu nodded. No windows, only 2 exits. Everything's lit, and I don't think 1 EMP will cut it, Kuro. Fumikage chuckled and reached into the pouch, pulling out a stack of discs and spreading them out like a hand of cards. Then it's a good thing I have more than 1 EMP, no. Tsu grinned. Wasn't expecting that, Kuro. And if I didn't, then there's a good chance that Ectoplasm Sensei won't, either. Fumikage nodded and tucked the EMPs back into their assigned pouch, snapping it shut and covering himself with his cloak. That is the general idea. Tinya rubbed at his right arm as the clock ticked down, feeling it ache from the injury he'd received in Hosu during internships. His partner glanced over at him. Your arm acting up or something? Tinya sighed and crossed his arms. An old injury, and a reminder of my foolishness. But we must focus on the task ahead. Ajiro nodded and turned to scan the seemingly empty dirt field ahead. 100 yen says that the place is gonna be filled with traps and pitfalls within seconds of the exam starting. Tinya huffed. Gambling on school grounds is prohibited, but yes, that is the most likely scenario. Ajiro snorted, before schooling his expression. Okay, I know you're pretty fast, but Power Loader does too, so he'll probably set the first trap right in front of the exit gate. And he's already there, so we can't count on being faster than him. Ideas. Tinya hummed to himself. You often use your tail to propel yourself forward, yes. Do you think you could accomplish something similar for 2 people at the same time? Ajiro grunted. I think so. My tail's a lot stronger than my arms and legs. I mean, you've seen me use the thing as a chair. Tinya nodded. Good. Then I have a plan. However, this will rely on your reaction time. How quickly can you hit the ground with your tail after I give the signal? Ajiro smirked. I live at a dojo. I'm pretty sure my body is hardwired to respond within a second of someone barking out an order. Tinya smiled underneath his helmet. Then we have a chance to get through the exit gate shortly after the exam begins. Do you trust me? Ajiro chuckled and held out a hand. Of course. Ajiro slammed his fists together, producing a shower of sparks. You ready for this, bro? Sato nodded eagerly. You bet. I'm stocked up on sugar, and I'm raring to go. Ajiro grinned, feeling his quirk spread across his legs. Then let's do this. The countdown hit 0, and the loudspeakers blared, exam start. Kyuka twirled one of her jacks around her finger, staring around at the forest that made up their exam site. I'm not hearing a lot of animals in here, and I doubt your rat army will hear you all the way over in ground beta. What's your stance on insects? Kauta whimpered and signed, I don't like talking to bugs. They used to come out whenever I used my quirk, and the other kids didn't like that. The only kid who didn't run when the bugs came ended up being a bully who would prey on kids with entomophobia, and they wanted me to be their partner in crime. Kyuka scowled. Scumbag. So, you try not to talk to bugs because you're afraid you'll turn out like that creep. Cowden nodded. Logically, I know that I won't, but I can't stop myself from being nervous. Kyuka sighed warmly and laid a hand on her partner's shoulder. It's okay to be nervous. Hell, I was nervous the first time I went on patrol during my internship. We've all got something that we're scared of, but what makes you a hero is standing up to that fear and conquering it. Right. Cowden nodded, his expression becoming determined. You're right. I can do this. Kyuka grinned and plugged her jacks into her glove speakers, letting out a brief pulse to check that they were functional. Let's get this party started. Hitachi fidgeted with the mask hanging by his neck, glancing over at his partner. So, does that mask actually block out stuff, or is it just for show? Siro winced and rubbed at his neck. Technically, it does protect me from stuff like gas, but the problem is that it doesn't actually have an air filter, meaning it can't stay closed for too long, or I'll suffocate. I'm realizing how stupid that is now that you bring it up, and I'm definitely going to talk to my costume designer after this exam. Hitachi grunted. So long as you're aware of the problem. Now, I know this is gonna sound invasive, but I swear it's important. What's your sexuality? Shiro blushed furiously. Why do you need to know that? Hitachi sighed. Because of Midnight's quirk. Its potency varies depending on the target's level of infatuation with her. For instance, I am very gay, so it's not very effective. Shiro's blush faded. Oh. How effective is it against asexuals? Hitachi rubbed at his chin. Well, I think you've got the same level of resistance as me, since neither of us are all that into women. Of course, nobody is entirely immune to it, but it does mean that it'll take either a very high concentration or prolonged exposure to make us fall asleep. So we've gotta move fast and hit hard if we wanna win before we pass out. Got it? Shiro grinned. I like to think I'm pretty good at moving fast. Dunno about hitting hard, though. Hitachi hummed. I might have a few tricks that I can teach you. His capture scarf snapped out and wrapped around a decently sized rock sitting nearby. Ever heard of flails? Izuku mentally rifled through his inventory as they walked towards the entrance to ground beta. So, what's the plan? Katsuki grunted as he snapped the handles of his gauntlets into place. If it were anyone but All Might, I'd say that the plan was to go in, blast their ass, and slap the handcuffs on them. But considering who we're facing, I think a more detailed strategy is in order. Izuku huffed. Damn right it is. We can't take down the #1 hero with brute force. Any ideas? Katsuki rubbed at his chin. Well, he doesn't seem to wear any kind of eye or ear protection, which means he's pretty vulnerable to my stun grenade. Unfortunately, a single flashbang probably won't weaken him enough to get the handcuffs on him. That, and he's way too fast for us to even consider escaping. And yes, that's taking your extreme gear into account. Izuku snapped his fingers. Damn. I don't think I have anything non-lethal that can remotely close the gap in raw power. Katsuki rubbed at one of his gauntlets. And since the tanks funnel into 3 barrels each, then a blast from one of these won't be enough to do more than stall him. Izuku then noticed something he had in his inventory, and he grinned. Hey. You know what we have that All Might doesn't? Katsuki glanced at him curiously. Range. Katsuki's eyes widened. True. His best ranged attack is Texas Smash, and that drops off quickly at longer ranges. You're not using a sniper rifle, are you? Izuku smirked. Not, something better. He pulled off his headphones and draped them around his neck, securing them to the clip on the back of his collar. His hair glowed, and the balls of light coalesced into a light blue astronaut helmet on his head, 2 cylindrical tanks on his back, and a futuristic-looking pistol in his hand. Katsuki's eyes widened, and he grinned. So, the plan is that I distract him while you build up a charged shot. Izuku nodded with a grin. And if anything goes wrong, we improvise. Katsuki snorted. You mean pull something out of our asses? Izuku shrugged. Same thing. Chapter 28. Momo frowned as Todoroki stared ahead at the fake suburb, his arms crossed and his expression cold. Todoroki-kun, we have to strategize. Her partner huffed. Stay here. You'll only hold me back, anyway. Momo scowled. That's not how this works. We were placed in pairs for a reason, Todoroki-kun. Teamwork is necessary if we want to pass. Todoroki didn't move an inch. I will handle this on my own. Momo reached a hand forward, when the loudspeakers blared. In an instant, Todoroki was wrapped in Aizawa-sensei's capture scarf, the man's eyes already glowing red behind his goggles. Naive. Dismissing your partner so quickly will only get you killed out in the field. Todoroki glared at the teacher, helpless without his quirk. Momo darted forward, slipping her collapsible staff from her belt and swinging at Aizawa-sensei's knees. The hero jumped over the attack and knocked her away with a roundhouse kick, sending her stumbling into the side of a building. Aizawa-sensei slung Todoroki over a stoplight and cut off the section of the scarf holding the teen hostage, tying it to a telephone pole. Todoroki growled, "This won't hold me. I'll just freeze it the second you take your eyes off me." Aizawa-sensei huffed, reaching into one of his belt pouches and scattering a bunch of caltrops onto the street underneath where Todoroki hung. "For your sake, I wouldn't recommend it. He crossed his arms and looked at Momo. Since your partner's insistence on working alone wasn't your fault, I'll give you another chance. I will go back to the exit gate. You'll have 5 minutes. He glared up at Todoroki. If you insist on leaving your teammate behind again, you fail. No questions asked. Am I clear? Todoroki scowled and looked away, staring off into the distance. Momo sighed and bowed to the hero. I will try my best, but I make no promises. Aizawa-sensei grunted. Remember, 5 minutes. After that, the exam is on for real. The hero disappeared over the rooftops, and Momo used her staff to sweep away the caltrops covering the street. The moment that the ground underneath Todoroki was cleared, ice spread along the section of the capture scarf, and the teen dropped to the ground as the fabric shattered. He immediately took a step in the direction of the exit gate, only to pause when Momo grabbed his shoulder. Are you deaf? He said that refusing to work together would be an automatic failure. Todoroki yanked his shoulder out of her grip and turned to face her with a scowl on his face. I don't need you tagging along. You're nothing but a hindrance. Momo felt something inside her shatter. Hindrance? Hindrance? Todoroki-kun, are you even listening to yourself? You claim that you don't want to be like Endeavor, and yet here you are using one of his most common tactics. Todoroki's expression darkened. Don't compare me to him. I'm nothing like him. I'll never be like him. Momo crossed her arms and scoffed. Nothing like him? Really? Take a good look at yourself, Hyuga. Maybe you'll finally see how foolish you're being right now. Her senses tingled, and she created a shield within a fraction of a second. Just in time, too, because without warning, ice burst out in every direction, ramming into her and destroying the surrounding area. She was shoved against the outer wall of the testing site, crying out as her back slammed against the concrete border. Mentally, she thanked Hatsum for revising her costume, as her lower spine likely would have shattered if the bookshelf had still been there. Todoroki walked forward, frost flowing off of his right side. Rescind your accusations, and I will let you watch me pass this exam by myself. Momo coughed, surprised by the blood that splattered on the ice holding her against the wall. By yourself? Don't make me laugh. You probably just failed by attacking your partner. Todoroki's scowl deepened. Attacking my partner? Please. I was getting rid of dead weight. I was removing the obstacle that was holding me back. Momo scoffed. The only thing holding you back is yourself, Hyuga. Refusing to use the other half of your quirk will only hurt you. Todoroki growled, and several spikes of ice rose from the ground by his right foot. You will not speak ill of my mother's ice. I have sworn an oath to surpass All Might without using Endeavor's fire. Momo huffed, looking her classmate in the eyes. If you believe that you can be a hero while casting aside half of your quirk, you're wrong. Only using your ice won't be enough. Apparently, that was the wrong thing to say. Todoroki's eyes burned with a cold fire, as more ice spread across her body. The teen snarled, of course it's not enough. It's never enough for anyone, is it? Shouto, stop this childish rebellion. Shouto, use the fire I gave you. Shouto, get better. He's never satisfied. Always demanding that I be better, that I improve, that I grow up. And if everyone else is going to be the same. A spike of ice formed on the ground. Then I'll just be the only one left standing. The spike rushed forward, and then Momo saw nothing but darkness. Okako sighed with relief as Aoyama managed to secure the handcuffs around 13's wrist. Good work, Nova. Suddenly, alarms started blaring around the area, and 13's head shot up. No, it couldn't be. But who? Okako felt something settle into the pit of her stomach. Sensei. What's going on? Nezu installed this particular alarm system to alert the school should a student attack a peer or a teacher. But I never thought it'd ever be used. Denki laughed with relief as he and Ashido dove through the exit gate. Mission complete. Suddenly, alarms started blaring, and he winced and covered his ears. His partner shouted, "What's happening?" Nezu appeared next to them, eyes wide open. No. These alarms could only mean one thing. The worst of events have come to pass. Dark Shadow winced and clutched at their head as alarms started blaring and flashing red lights illuminated the atrium they were in. Make it stop, Fumi. Make it stop. Fumikage frowned. Did my EMPs trigger the alarms somehow? Ectoplasm shook his head, the giant clone dissipating. No, this was caused by another student. These alarms are the violent student warning system, activated if a student attacks another person on school grounds. This particular sequence indicates that it was a hero student. Tsu's camouflage fizzled out, showing her crouched next to the gate. She placed a finger under her mouth, glancing around with a worried expression. This can't be good, Kuro. Tinya shot up, glancing around the break room as the alarm started blaring. The violent student warning system. But why? Who? Ajiro whipped his head around to stare at his classmate. You know about this? Tinya nodded, his eyebrows furrowed in concern. Tensei told me that UA has an additional alarm system that activates if a student attacks another student unprovoked on school grounds. Power Loader swore under his breath, walking back over to his mech suit. You two, stay here. This sequence means that it was triggered by a hero student. Tinya went pale. No. He couldn't have. Ajiro paused as the sound of alarms filled the residential area. Bro. What's going on? Sato paused, still under the effects of his quirk. Dunno. Sounds bad. The cement walls in front of them suddenly slid into the ground, and Cementos came flying over on a wave of liquid concrete. You two, stay here. A hero student has attacked someone unprovoked. Stay back and let the teachers handle this. Ajiro felt a chill run down his spine. This can't end well. Kyuka jerked her head up and held a hand out, causing Kauta to stop in his tracks. The boy quickly signed, What? Alarms are going off around the perimeter. They're not the usual security breach alarms, something different. I haven't heard these before. Present Mike burst out of the tree line, his expression serious. You two, come with me. We need to get back to the main campus ASAP. As they ran towards the exit gate, Kyuka managed to ask, What's going on, sensei? This is the violent student warning system. I've only heard it activate once before, back when I was a hero student and one of my classmates used his quirk on a Gen Ed kid. These specific alarms mean that someone in the hero course attacked another student or teacher unprovoked. Hitachi swore under his breath as alarms echoed throughout the rocky field. Shit. Somebody tripped the violent student warning system. Zero scratched at his head in confusion. The what now? It's a separate alarm system from the intruder alerts. The VSWS triggers whenever a student attacks another student or a teacher without permission. That's why you didn't hear it during the battle trials or the sports festival. Dad and Pops told me about it after I was accepted into Gen Ed. Midnight sat up and shook her head vigorously. Crap, a hero student triggered it this time. You two, stay here and let the teachers handle whatever happened. Izuku went pale as alarms started blaring throughout ground beta. Shit. Katsuki, forget the exam. Something happened that I thought would happen, but prayed that it wouldn't. Katsuki glanced around, hands curled into claws. What? All Might landed on the street in front of them, his trademark smile noticeably absent. Young Midoriya, you know what is happening. Izuku nodded, glancing in the direction that he had seen the other bus go. Yeah, I do. Todoroki snapped. Shouta swore under his breath as he parkoured over the rooftops of the exam site, heading towards the massive spire of ice in the distance. The sudden glacier was worrying, but not nearly as worrying as the red stain that was focused towards the tip and grew lighter near the base. What the hell happened? As he got closer, he noticed that the buildings near where he'd restrained Todoroki were utterly demolished by ice. The pit in his stomach only grew, and he hit the quick release switch on his weights, letting them drop to the ground as he shot forward. In only a few seconds, he reached the border of the exam site, and what he saw made him go pale. Todoroki was standing with his back to the hero, his attention solely focused on the tableau in front of him. The tall spire of ice, originating from the ground at the teen's feet. The spire that had impaled Yaoyorosa through the stomach, pinning her to the concrete wall behind her. Her breathing was slow, labored. She was still alive, but only barely hanging on. Slowly, Todoroki turned to face Shouta, and the hero inhaled sharply at the cold look in the student's eyes. Ah, sensei. I suppose I shouldn't be too surprised. I wasn't exactly subtle. Todoroki, what the hell are you doing? The student tilted his head curiously, almost callously. What do you mean, sensei? I'm simply removing the obstacles in my path. Now that the dead weight is out of the way, I can finally pass this exam. Shouda's eyes narrowed, and his capture scarf began to unravel from his neck. Stand down. I don't want to fight you. Todoroki scoffed, eyes spreading across the ground from his feet. Of course you do. That's the entire point of this exam, is it not? The point was to help you overcome your weaknesses, not whatever the hell this is. Todoroki huffed, frost covering his arm. But I did overcome my weakness, sensei. My weakness is now pinned to the wall, unable to get in my way like she kept trying to do from the beginning. Shouda's quirk flared, and the frost vanished from Todoroki's arm. Don't make me do this, Todoroki. Get your partner down from the ice, take her to recovery girl, and maybe I won't expel you. Todoroki scoffed. Didn't you hear me, sensei? I don't have a partner. You saddled me with dead weight, expecting me to overcome you with this useless girl hanging off my back. Well, I found a way around the handicap. Shouldn't you be proud of me? Or am I still not good enough for you? There was a green blur, and a tornado of fire burst to life at the base of the spire. The ice melted, and Midoriya grabbed Yaoyorozu from the wall, staring at Todoroki from behind a wooden hog mask. You know, dude, if you were having issues with your asshole dad, you could have just vented to us instead of half killing your partner. Todoroki rolled his eyes. Is everyone deaf? I don't need partners. They're nothing but dead weight. Shouda ordered, Midoriya, get Yaoyorozu to the nurse's office. You've only got a couple minutes at most. Midoriya nodded, and his hoverboard roared to life. The two students sped off towards the main campus, and Shouda focused his attention completely on Todoroki. The teen merely huffed. Who cares what happens to her? She'd only be a hindrance in the field, barking orders at people more capable than her. If she dies, it's one less burden. Shouda snarled, she was your ally. Your backup. Todoroki scoffed. Allies. In the real world, there are no allies. There is only me, and the villain that I am facing. That is all that matters. There was a rush of wind, forcing the hero to blink, and All Might was suddenly standing between Shouda and Todoroki. Todoroki shouted. Stop this now, before anyone else gets hurt. The teen snorted. That's rich. You of all people should know, people always get hurt. But you wouldn't care about that, would you? So long as you don't get hurt, everything's all hunky-dory, isn't it? Well, newsflash, number one bastard, it's not. People get hurt and die every day, and yet you keep on smiling as though it doesn't matter. As though your sheer presence makes all that death and suffering worthless. Symbol of peace, my ass. You're just a bringer of endless violence. Faster than Shouda could react, a spike of ice rushed up from the ground, slicing open All Might's right side. The hero coughed up blood and fell to his knee. Shouda whipped his capture scarf out, only for it to be caught in a block of ice that shot up from the ground and wrapped around it. Todoroki tilted his head curiously at Shouda, before turning his attention back to All Might. Now do you understand? That's pain. That's what people deal with every day of their lives. That's what makes us human. How does it feel to be human, oh great and powerful symbol of peace? All Might coughed again and rose to his feet, hand clutched against his side. You misunderstand, Todoroki shouted. I live in pain every day. My smile is just a means of hiding it. Todoroki scoffed in disbelief. You lie. Everyone lies, some more than others. And heroes? Heroes are the biggest liars of all. Always claiming that they defend the peace, when they cause the most violence out of everyone. You. Best genist. Hawks. Endeavor. Oh, the things I could say about Endeavor. But not today. No, I think that conversation deserves a larger audience. Ice burst out in all directions, and a concrete panel rose out of the ground in front of All Might, protecting the two heroes from the attack. As soon as the ice stopped growing, Shouda swarmed up the side and looked down into the center, only to find it empty. Shit. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.